Welcome to Oryven Stories.
In the beginning, before light caressed the void, there was darkness. Not the darkness of absence, but the darkness of potential, the great cosmic womb from which all would emerge. This darkness had a name, whispered by the very atoms of creation, NYX. She was ancient, even among the primordial deities, born from chaos itself. Unlike her siblings, who would later craft mountains or breathe life into oceans, NYX's essence was subtler yet more profound. She was the night personified, not merely the absence of day, but a presence unto herself, cloaked in mystery and pregnant with possibility. The poets would later sing that her hair flowed like liquid obsidian across the heavens, that her skin shimmered with the light of distant stars not yet born, that her eyes held the depth of all secrets ever kept. But these were merely mortal attempts to capture the uncapturable, to define the indefinable. For NYX was not merely darkness, she was the sacred space between heartbeats, the pause between thoughts, the moment when one reality ends and another begins. And this is her story. From the swirling chaos of pre-creation, where neither time nor space had meaning, the first consciousness emerged. Chaos, the great void, birthed its firstborn, NYX, Gaia, Tartarus, and Eros. Night, earth, the underworld, and love. Each embodied a fundamental aspect of existence. But among them, NYX alone understood the value of patience, of waiting, of the sacred darkness that nurtures before revelation. While Gaia busied herself with forming landscapes and Tartarus carved out the depths beneath, NYX stretched her consciousness across the expanse, creating the first night. Her darkness was not empty, but filled with potential, a canvas awaiting the artwork of creation. Sister, called Gaia as her mountains rose and valleys deepened, why do you simply spread yourself thin rather than create something tangible? NYX's voice, when she replied, was like the whisper of stars yet unborn. I am creating the space in which all things find their meaning. Without my darkness, how would you know the shape of your mountains? How would life know when to rest and when to dream? My gift is context, dear sister. My gift is depth. Gaia considered this as she continued to form the earth with her hands. Perhaps you are right, she conceded, but will you not be lonely, existing only as the absence of definition? NYX's laughter rippled through the cosmos, causing the first shimmer of starlight to appear within her darkness. I am not absence, sister. I am the fullness from which all else must be carved. Watch, and you will understand. And with that, NYX began to condense certain aspects of her vast consciousness, creating within herself the first distinct entities beyond the primordial four. She gathered the concept of rest and shaped it into a form, cradling it like a newborn until it took on a separate existence. Thus came Hypnos, sleep, emerging from her right hand, his touch gentle yet irresistible. His eyes were heavy-lidded, his movements languorous, his voice a soothing murmur that could quiet even the most turbulent thoughts. As he took his first independent breaths, NYX smiled with maternal pride. My son, she whispered, you will be both blessing and necessity to all that comes after. Through you, the living will find renewal and the divine will find respite. From her left hand came another concentration of her essence, this one solemn, inevitable, carrying both mercy and finality in its aspect. Thanatos, death, stood before his mother, his face neither cruel nor kind, but perfectly neutral, understanding his role in the cosmic order. Mother, he spoke, his voice like the closing of a door. I understand my purpose. I am the threshold between states of being, the necessary transition that gives meaning to existence. NYX embraced her twin sons, these first children born not of flesh but of concept. The poets will later claim, you were born of my union with Erebus, the primordial darkness, she told them. But you are fragments of myself, aspects of my power given independent form. Next, NYX turned her attention to the ephemeral spaces between waking and sleeping, the landscapes of unconsciousness that would provide both messages and mysteries to mortal minds. From her thoughts, she spun the numberless oneiroi, the dreams, each a storyteller who would whisper into sleeping minds during Hypnos's reign. She gave them names and purposes. Morpheus, master of human form, who could craft dreams so realistic that dreamers would wake with tears on their pillows for lovers who existed only in sleep. Phobetor, who specialized in nightmares, not from cruelty but because fear often taught what comfort could not. Phantasos, creator of surreal landscapes that would inspire artists and visionaries throughout the ages. My children, NYX instructed the assembled dreams, you will be my messengers to the conscious mind. Through you, I will speak in the language of symbol and emotion. Through you, I will guide and warn, comfort and inspire. Your canvas will be the sleeping mind. Your paint, the subconscious desires and fears of all beings. The dreams bowed before their mother, their forms shifting and blending, never quite fixed in appearance. We will serve the night with imagination, they promised in unison, their voices a harmony of whispers. Then came the Hesperides, guardians of Twilight who would tend golden apples at the edge of the world where day surrenders to night. Their voices were the hush of evening, their movements the graceful retreat of sunlight. NYX created them to mark the boundary between her domain and that of the yet unborn light gods who would someday claim the day. You will stand at the threshold, she told these daughters, neither fully of darkness nor fully of light. In this liminality lies your power and your wisdom. But it was during her deepest meditation, when NYX contemplated the very nature of existence itself, that her most profound children emerged. She understood that even in a universe of immortal beings, there must be order, sequence, consequence. There must be fate. And so from the central mystery of her being came the Moirai, Clotho, Lachesis, and Atropos. The spinner, the allotter, the unturnable. The fates, weavers of destiny, measurers of life threads, determiners of endings. They stood before their mother, three aspects of a single concept, their hands already moving in the rhythms of their eternal task. Though newly born, they possessed ancient wisdom, for they were the embodiment of cosmic law itself. Mother, said Clotho, the spinner of life's thread, as she first gained consciousness, why have you created us with power that will one day make even the Olympians tremble? NYX enveloped her daughters in her starlit embrace. Because balance must exist, my children. Light requires shadow. Beginning demands ending. Even immortals must respect the boundaries of existence or chaos returns. You are not merely my daughters. You are the necessary principles without which existence would have no meaning, no direction, no consequence. Lachesis, who would measure the thread of each life, looked at her sisters and then at her mother. We understand our purpose, but the burden of it, to determine the span of joy and suffering, to measure out both blessing and tragedy. You will not be cruel, NYX assured her, merely necessary. And in necessity, there is its own form of compassion. Without boundaries, experience loses meaning. Without endings, beginnings have no significance. Atropos, the eldest seeming of the three, despite their simultaneous birth, tested the edge of her shears, the implement with which she would someday cut the life thread of mortals and immortals alike. Even you, mother, are even you subject to fate? NYX's smile held the mystery of eternity. I was before fate, daughter. I will be after it. But in the great middle where consciousness dwells, yes, even I respect your domain. For what I created must have integrity, or it is merely whim. As the cosmos continued its expansion from primordial simplicity toward complex existence, NYX's family grew. From her essence came Nemesis, divine retribution, who would ensure that excessive pride would always be balanced by appropriate fall. Came Apate, personification of deceit, for even in a divine world, truth must have its counterpart to be meaningful. Came Philotes, friendship and affection, for NYX understood that connection would be the sweetest gift to conscious beings. She birthed the Keres, spirits of violent death, not from malice, but from recognition that not all endings would be gentle. She created Eris, strife and discord, for without conflict, resolution has no meaning. She shaped Oises, misery, for without the depths of sorrow, joy cannot reach its heights. Each of these children understood their place in the divine order. Each accepted their role without resentment, for they were aspects of existence itself, neutral in their fundamental nature despite how mortals would later judge them. Mother, asked Eris, as she practiced stirring conflict among the newly forming elements, the mortals who will someday walk Sister Gaia's surface will curse my name, they will call me evil. How should I bear this burden? Nyx gathered her daughter close, the discord bringer becoming temporarily harmonious in her mother's embrace. They will curse you with their words, but invoke you with their actions, child. They will denounce conflict while creating it, deny discord while sowing it. Your role is not to be loved, but to be necessary. And in the greatest conflicts, sometimes, will arise the most beautiful resolutions. "And what of me?" asked Oisis, her form perpetually draped in shadows, her eyes holding the weight of all future tears. "To be suffering incarnate, to bring only pain. Without you, daughter, depth of character would never be achieved," Nyx explained, wiping an eternal tear from Oisis's cheek. "The greatest wisdom, the deepest compassion, the most profound art, all will emerge from those who have known your touch and transformed it into understanding. You are not merely pain, you are the possibility of transcendence." Each child of Nyx carried both burden and purpose, both power and responsibility. They were not the capricious gods who would come later, using mortals as playthings for their amusement. They were foundational forces, necessary aspects of a universe complex enough to support conscious experience. As the children of night established their domains, other primordial entities were similarly creating the fundamental structures of existence. Gaia's mountains rose higher, her valleys cut deeper. Upon her surface, the first waters gathered, and within them, the first stirrings of what would someday be called life began to pulse with potential. Tartarus expanded the underworld, creating elaborate networks of caverns and rivers that would someday house the dead. Eros, primordial love, wove connections between all things, ensuring that relation would be as fundamental to existence as separation. And from chaos, new primordials continued to emerge. Erebus, the deeper darkness, who would become Nyx's consort in later tellings. Pontus, the primordial sea, who would cover much of Gaia's surface. Kronos, not to be confused with the later Titan Cronus, who gave structure to time itself, transforming eternity into measured experience. It was Kronos who approached Nyx as she wove stars into her dark tapestry, his form flickering between youth and age, his eyes both ancient and newborn. "Sister," he greeted her, "I bring the gift of sequence, of before and after. How shall we collaborate in this emerging cosmos?" Nyx considered the question as she continued her celestial weaving. "My domain will be the counterpoint to what comes next," she finally replied. "Light will soon emerge, brother, bright, immediate, revealing. I shall provide the necessary balance, the restful darkness, the concealing shadow, the mystery that makes revelation valuable." "A cycle then," Kronos mused, his beard growing and receding as he spoke. "Day and night in eternal alternation." "Yes," agreed Nyx, "for neither light nor darkness should reign unchallenged. In their dance will emerge the rhythm that sustains all life, all consciousness, all meaning, and so the fundamental patterns of existence were established by these first beings, these embodiments of cosmic principles. Not through committee or conscious planning, but through the natural expression of their essential natures, the universe took form. Yet among all these primordial forces, Nyx alone seemed to truly understand what was being created. While others shaped their domains according to impulse or instinct, Night crafted hers with foresight, with compassion, with awareness of how each aspect would affect the whole. The primordial age gave way to the age of Titans. Gaia and Uranus, the sky, produced children of tremendous power, but limited wisdom. Cronus, Rhea, Oceanus, Tethys, Hyperion, Thea, Coeus, Phoebe, Iapetus, Themis, Crius, Mnemosyne. These 12 original Titans would later produce many offspring of their own, populating the world with divine beings of varied powers and temperaments. Nyx watched this proliferation of deities with interest, but maintained her distance. Her domain was fundamental. Hers was not the realm of specific natural features or human concerns, but the overarching principle of darkness itself. Yet the Titans respected her ancient power. Even Cronus, who overthrew his father Uranus and ruled with paranoid brutality, would not dare challenge Night or her children. When the Titans gathered on Mount Othrys to divide responsibility for various aspects of the cosmos, none presumed to claim dominion over darkness. The night belongs to Nyx, they agreed, as it has since the beginning and shall until the end. During this age, Nyx's relationship with Erebus deepened. While later poets would simplify their connection, Calling them husband and wife, the truth was more complex. They were darkness and deeper darkness, shadow and void, related concepts that sometimes merged and sometimes maintained separation. From their intermittent union came children who represented aspects of both their natures: ether, the upper air, and Hemera, the day. It might seem strange that night and darkness would produce day as offspring. But in the cosmic understanding, opposites are not enemies, but complementary aspects of a greater whole. "My daughter," Nyx said to Hemera as the young goddess prepared to take her place in the cosmic order, "you will be my counterpart, my balance. Where I conceal, you will reveal. Where I offer rest, you will bring activity. Where I nurture mystery, you will celebrate clarity." Hemera, radiant and direct in her nature, embraced her mother. "Will we be adversaries then? Light opposed to darkness?" "No, child," Nyx corrected gently. "We will be partners in the great dance of time. Neither of us complete without the other, neither fully meaningful without our counterpart. The mortals may worship you more openly, but in their secret hearts they will understand my necessity just as deeply." And so began the eternal cycle. Nyx drawing her dark veil across the world, then withdrawing to allow Hemera her time of dominion, only to return again when the wheel of hours completed its turn. Not a battle, but a choreography. Not opposition, but rhythm. During the reign of the Titans, the first generations of lesser immortals began to appear: nymphs, spirits, demigods. The cosmos was becoming populated not just with embodiments of cosmic principles, but with personalities, with beings capable of desire and choice, wisdom and folly. Nyx observed these developments with both pleasure and concern. "The world grows complex," she remarked to Erebus as they watched a group of oceanids, daughters of the Titan Oceanus, playing in a freshwater spring. "With complexity comes the possibility of both greater harmony and greater discord." "Does this disturb you, Ancient One?" Erebus asked, his voice the rumble of distant caverns. "No," Nyx replied after a thoughtful moment. "It fulfills the potential that has existed since the beginning. But I foresee conflict on a scale these younger beings cannot yet imagine." Her prophecy would prove accurate sooner than even she anticipated. For among the Titans, Cronus ruled with increasing paranoia, swallowing his own children by Rhea to prevent the fulfillment of a prophecy that he, like his father before him, would be overthrown by his offspring. When Rhea, desperate to save her youngest child, approached Nyx for guidance, the ancient goddess received her with compassion. "Your husband breaks cosmic law," Nyx told the Titaness. "He disrupts the proper succession of generations. This cannot stand." "But what can I do?" Rhea asked, cradling her swollen belly where the unborn Zeus grew. "He is too powerful to oppose directly." Nyx smiled, and in her smile was the wisdom of eons. "Bring the child to me when he is born. I will conceal him in my darkest shadows until he is ready to fulfill his destiny." And so it came to pass that when Zeus was born, Rhea wrapped a stone in swaddling clothes to deceive Cronus, while the infant himself was spirited away to a cave on Crete. There, shrouded in Nyx's protective darkness, hidden from his father's searching gaze, the future king of gods was nursed by the goat Amalthea and guarded by the Curetes, whose drumming concealed the baby's cries. "Why do you protect him?" asked Thanatos, watching his mother cast veils of shadow over the hidden cave. "He is not your child, not your responsibility." "Because balance must be maintained," Nyx explained. "Cronus disrupts the proper order by attempting to prevent the inevitable. No being, no matter how powerful, should be able to halt the wheel of cosmic progression. And this child will restore balance." Thanatos sounded skeptical. "He will replace one form of imbalance with another," Nyx admitted. "Perfect harmony is not achieved in a single turn of the wheel, but he represents necessary change, necessary progression, and so I shield him until his time comes." When Zeus reached maturity, he left the protective darkness that had sheltered his childhood. With cunning and determination, he forced his father Cronus to disgorge the swallowed children, Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon. Thus restored to life, these young deities joined their brother in war against the Titans. The conflict that followed was cataclysmic. For 10 years, the younger gods fought against the entrenched power of the Titans. Mountains were used as weapons, storms of unprecedented fury lashed the earth. The very fabric of reality trembled with the force of divine combat. During this titanomachy, this war of immortals, NYX maintained her neutrality. Night continued to follow day, darkness continued to provide respite from light. But in subtle ways, she aided the younger generation, concealing their movements during strategic retreats, providing dreams of insight to guide their planning, ensuring that darkness remained a sanctuary when they needed to recover from the day's battles. Zeus, recognizing the value of additional allies, descended to Tartarus and freed the imprisoned Hecaton Keres, 100-handed giants of immense strength, and the Cyclopes, one-eyed craftsmen of extraordinary skill. In gratitude, the Cyclopes forged magical weapons for the young gods, a thunderbolt for Zeus, a trident for Poseidon, a helmet of invisibility for Hades. It was this helmet, imbued with aspects of NYX's own power of concealment, that proved pivotal in several decisive battles. Wearing it, Hades could move unseen among the Titan forces, creating confusion and chaos in their ranks. "Your darkness serves him well," observed Erebus as they watched Hades materialize behind a Titan general, eliminating him before vanishing again. "It is not my darkness," NYX corrected, "it is his use of it." Darkness, like any power, is shaped by the intention of its wielder. The war reached its climax when the Hecaton Keres hurled entire mountains at the Titan stronghold, while Zeus wielded his thunderbolt with devastating effect. The Titan forces were routed, their leaders captured. Cronus and many of his brothers were cast into Tartarus, imprisoned in the deepest regions of the underworld. The cosmos had a new ruling order. In the aftermath of victory, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades divided the world between them, drawing lots to determine their domains. Zeus received the sky and air, becoming Lord of Thunder and King of the gods. Poseidon claimed the seas and waters, gaining dominion over earthquakes and horses as well. Hades was granted the underworld, becoming ruler of the dead and guardian of subterranean wealth. Their sisters and other allies were also given significant roles. Hera became queen of the gods and goddess of marriage. Demeter took charge of agriculture and harvest. Hestia became keeper of the hearth and guardian of home. Gradually, a new pantheon took shape, with each deity claiming specific responsibilities in the cosmic and human order. Yet none claimed night as their domain. None challenged NYX's authority. Not even Zeus, Thunderbearer and self-proclaimed king of gods, would confront the ancient goddess whose power predated his own by countless ages. The tale is told that once, in his youth, Zeus pursued one of NYX's sons, determined to cast him from Olympus for some perceived slight. He tracked the fleeing deity to the entrance of NYX's palace at the edge of chaos. There, as Zeus raised his lightning bolt, ready to strike, NYX simply emerged from her doorway. She spoke no word, made no threat. She merely looked upon him with eyes that had witnessed the birth of creation itself. Zeus, master of storm and sky, felt his immortal heart skip a beat. In that moment, he understood, truly understood, what it meant to face a power beyond measurement. He lowered his weapon, bowed his head in respect, and retreated. Never again would he pursue vengeance against any child of night. This incident was never recorded in the formal annals of Olympus, never celebrated in hymns or depicted in temple friezes, but among the gods it was remembered. It established an unspoken boundary. The Olympians ruled the world of natural phenomena and human affairs, but certain primordial powers remained beyond their jurisdiction. And of these ancient forces, none commanded more instinctive respect than NYX, eldest daughter of chaos, mother of fates, embodiment of the darkness that preceded light. Among her many children, NYX held special affection for the Oneiroi, the dreams. These numberless spirits, each with unique purpose and character, were her most creative offspring. Through them, she touched the minds of mortals and immortals alike, revealing truths that daylight often obscured. Morpheus, master of human form, could craft dreams so real that dreamers woke with tears on their pillows for lovers who existed only in sleep. Phobeta specialized in nightmares, not from cruelty, but because fear often taught what comfort could not. Phantasos created surreal landscapes that inspired poets and madmen equally. "Why do you favor these ephemeral creators?" asked Thanatos, her solemn son of death, "when their works vanish with the morning light?" NYX ran her fingers through the river of dreams flowing from her palace. "Because, my son, in dreams we glimpse potential. The mortal who dreams of flight may one day build wings. The god who dreams of love may find compassion. Nothing truly transformative has ever existed that was not first a dream. The dreams operated from NYX's palace at the western edge of the world, where reality blurred into the primordial void. Each night, they would gather by their mother's obsidian throne, receiving assignments for whom they would visit and what visions they would bring. "Tonight, Morpheus," NYX instructed, "visit the young sculptor in Athens. Show him the form that lies waiting within the marble block he contemplates. The statue he will create must speak to generations yet unborn. Phobeter, the general who plans conquest, must see the true cost of his ambition. Show him not glory but grief, the weeping mothers, the fatherless children, the barren fields where nothing grows but bones. Phantasos, the oracle at Delphi, requires clarity beyond what Apollo provides. Take her to the spaces between worlds where past and future are visible simultaneously. She must understand the pattern to interpret its meaning." Night after night, the dreams performed their sacred duties, carrying messages coded in symbol and emotion. Sometimes they brought comfort, sometimes warning, sometimes inspiration, but always truth, albeit truth disguised in the language of the unconscious mind. It was through dreams that NYX first noticed a young goddess whose power resonated with her own. Hecate, born of Titans, mistress of crossroads, witchcraft, and the moon. Though not her daughter by birth, NYX recognized a kindred spirit, one who understood the power of thresholds, of transitions, of the spaces between defined states. When the Olympians waged war against the Titans, Hecate stood apart, pledging allegiance to neither side. For this wisdom, Zeus later rewarded her, allowing her to maintain her ancient powers when other Titans were stripped of theirs. But it was NYX who quietly guided Hecate through those turbulent times, sending dreams to counsel patience and perspective. After the war, when the Olympians established their reign, NYX invited Hecate to her palace at the edge of chaos. There, among starfields and nebulae, the ancient night and the younger goddess of witchcraft walked together. "You call me here as a mentor calls an apprentice," observed Hecate, her three-formed shadow shifting across NYX's celestial floors. "Yet I am not your child, nor you my creator." NYX smiled, and distant galaxies glimmered in response. "Blood is merely one type of kinship, daughter of Perses. We are bound by something deeper. We both understand that power dwells not in exhibits of strength, but in thresholds, in transitions, in the turning of cosmic wheels." From that night forward, Hecate became, if not a daughter, then a devoted student of NYX. The night taught her to read the patterns between stars, to understand the language of crossroads, to recognize the weight of moments when possibility crystallizes into destiny. "Your domain is the crossroads," NYX explained, as they stood at a place where three paths converged under a moonless sky. "Mine is the darkness that makes all paths equal, all choices momentarily suspended. Together, we embody the sacred moment of potential, when what will be has not yet excluded what might be." Hecate, her triple form shifting like shadows in firelight, considered this wisdom. Is this why mortals fear both night and crossroads? Because in these spaces, certainty dissolves. Precisely, NYX confirmed. Humans crave definition, boundaries, certainties. We represent the dissolution of these comforts, the necessary void from which new possibilities emerge. They fear us because we remind them of their own depths, their own uncharted territories. Yet they seek us too, Hecate noted. Their witches call upon me, their poets invoke you. Those with wisdom understand that growth requires dissolution, NYX replied. The seed must break open in darkness before the plant can reach toward light. These philosophical exchanges between night and the goddess of witchcraft became a regular occurrence. Often they were joined by others who understood liminality. Hypnos and his dream children. Thanatos, whose dominion was the ultimate threshold. The Moirai, who determined when one state of being would transition to another. Together, this assembly of threshold deities formed what some poets would later call the Court of Shadows. Not a formal governmental structure like Olympus, but a gathering of like-minded powers who understood the cosmic significance of boundaries and their crossing. It was during one such gathering that Morpheus brought troubling news. The Olympians grow arrogant, he reported. They believe themselves the architects of all creation, forgetting the primordial powers that made their existence possible. "Let them believe what comforts them," NYX replied, unconcerned. "Cosmic truth does not require acknowledgement to remain true, but they reshape the stories mortals tell," Morpheus persisted. "In the new tales, we are diminished, relegated to footnotes in their grand narrative. Some poetasters even claim Zeus created the night itself." At this, quiet laughter rippled through the assembly. NYX herself smiled indulgently, like a parent amused by a child's imaginative boasting. "Stories change, reality remains. I was ancient when Zeus was unborn, potential in his father's thoughts. I will remain when his thunder is but an echo in cosmic memory." Yet despite her dismissal of Olympian revisionism, NYX recognized the power of narrative. She understood that for mortals particularly, the stories they told shaped how they perceived reality, how they interacted with divine forces, how they structured their understanding of existence itself. "Let us ensure then," she proposed to her court of shadows, "that our truths are not entirely forgotten. Not through temples or priesthoods or formal doctrines, these are the methods of younger gods, but through dreams, through mystery, through the direct experience of our domains." And so it was decided. While the Olympians claimed dominion through spectacle and scripture, the primordial powers would maintain their influence through more subtle means, through experiences that bypassed conscious thought and spoke directly to the deepest levels of mortal awareness. When humans walked in darkness, they would feel NYX's presence not as theological concept, but as lived reality, the comfort of concealment, the freedom from judgment, the potential for transformation that only darkness provides. When they stood at crossroads, physical or metaphorical, they would sense Hecate's influence, the weight of choice, the simultaneous presence of multiple possibilities, the understanding that decision shapes destiny. When they surrendered to sleep, they would enter Hypnos's realm not as supplicants, but as honored guests, receiving the gift of renewal that only temporary oblivion can provide. And in dreams, they would experience the wisdom of the Oneiroi, insights beyond rational thought, truths clothed in symbol and emotion, guidance that spoke to soul rather than intellect. This approach ensured that even as Olympian religion formalized and institutionalized, the more ancient powers maintained their essential connection to mortal experience. Temples might be built to Zeus and Apollo, but darkness and dreams required no architecture to make their presence felt. As the Olympian age progressed, humanity spread across Gaia's surface, forming civilizations of increasing complexity. They built cities and cultivated fields, developed writing and mathematics, created art and formulated laws. And throughout these developments, their relationship with the divine evolved as well. Mortals in their brief lives knew NYX primarily through her absence. They celebrated the sun, feared the storm, prayed to gods of harvest and hearth. Yet the night herself they acknowledged with quiet respect rather than lavish temples. Those who did worship her were often those who understood liminality. Midwives who worked the threshold between non-life and life, hospice attendants who eased the transition from life to death, poets who translated the ineffable into words, lovers who found in darkness a sanctuary from judgment. In Athens, once yearly, women would gather for the Nyctelia, the night mysteries. Unlike the raucous celebrations of Dionysus or the stately processions honoring Athena, these were quiet affairs. Participants wore dark clothing, spoke in whispers, and brought offerings of night-blooming flowers, obsidian mirrors, and water drawn from wells under moonlight. No records survive of what occurred during these ceremonies, for the devotees kept their secrets well. But it is said that women emerged from the Nyctelia changed, their eyes holding new wisdom, their steps more certain, their words carrying weight that transcended their social standing in daylight hours. Among men, only those with special sensitivity to the gods' world sought NYX's guidance directly. Orpheus, the legendary musician who dared journey to the underworld for love, was said to have composed his most haunting melodies after spending 7 nights in a cave dedicated to the goddess of darkness. When asked what NYX had taught him, Orpheus would only say, "She showed me that the spaces between notes are as important as the notes themselves." The poet Hesiod, in his Theogony, acknowledged NYX's primordial nature, placing her among the first beings to emerge from chaos. Yet even his comprehensive genealogy of the gods barely scratched the surface of night's true essence. Like all mortals attempting to capture divine reality in human language, Hesiod could only approximate, could only translate the ineffable into imperfect metaphor. "They try so earnestly to understand us," NYX remarked to Erebus as they observed a group of philosophers debating the nature of divinity under a star-filled sky. "They create categories and hierarchies, family trees and mythic histories, all to make comprehensible what exists beyond their comprehension." "Should we resent this reduction?" Erebus asked, his voice the whisper of deepest caves. "No," NYX replied. "We should recognize it as the profoundest form of worship. This striving to know what cannot be fully known, to name what exists beyond naming. Their stories may simplify our reality, but the impulse behind those stories is sacred." And indeed, as human civilization developed, the stories about NYX evolved as well. In some traditions, she became fearsome, a goddess to be propitiated rather than embraced. In others, she was wisdom personified, the keeper of mysteries accessible only to initiates. In still others, she faded into abstract concept, no longer anthropomorphized, but recognized simply as the dark principle that balances light. Yet through all these interpretations, the essential truth remained. Night was not merely absence but presence, not merely interval but entity, not merely condition but consciousness. Those with wisdom understood this intuitively. The desert hermit who found clarity in midnight meditation, the astronomer who read cosmic history in the light of distant stars, the lover who discovered in darkness a level of intimacy impossible under revealing sun. These were NYX's true worshippers, whether they named her or not. As civilizations rose and fell across Gaia's surface, Minoan and Mycenaean, Egyptian and Babylonian, Greek and Roman, Persian and Chinese, NYX observed with the detached interest of one who measures time in eons rather than centuries. Human empires were mayflies to her, momentary configurations in an eternal dance. Yet she was not indifferent to human development. Through her children, particularly the dreams, she maintained connection with mortal consciousness, guiding when appropriate, warning when necessary, inspiring when possible. It was during the Golden Age of Athens that NYX took particular interest in human affairs. This civilization, with its unprecedented exploration of philosophy, politics, drama, and art, represented a flowering of potential that resonated with her own creative essence. "These mortals create beauty that rivals divine work," she observed to Morpheus as they watched a performance of Aeschylus's Oresteia under a full moon. "Their tragedies capture cosmic truth in human scale. They seek to understand the balance between light and darkness, between order and chaos," Morpheus agreed. "They question the justice of gods and the purpose of suffering. They approach divine wisdom through human inquiry. And yet," NYX noted with sadness, "their time is so brief. Aeschylus himself will soon enter Thanatos' embrace. The audience who weeps at his insights will follow within decades. How do they bear the weight of such knowledge against such brevity?" "Perhaps," suggested Morpheus, "that is their greatest strength. To seek wisdom despite knowing they cannot possess it completely. To strive for beauty despite its inevitable decay, to love despite certain loss." NYX considered this as she wrapped Athens in her velvet darkness. "Perhaps you are right, my son. Perhaps mortality itself is not limitation, but catalyst, the necessary constraint that gives urgency to their search for meaning." During this period, NYX developed particular fondness for certain mortals. Not always the most famous or powerful, but those whose understanding of darkness showed uncommon depth, the philosopher who recognized that questions were often more valuable than answers, the priestess who understood that divine truth requires an emptying of preconception, the architect who designed a temple where darkness and light engaged in perfect dialogue. To these individuals, NYX would sometimes appear in dreams, not revealing her full identity, but sharing insights that would transform their understanding. They would wake with new clarity, new purpose, new appreciation for the generative power of uncertainty. "Why these few?" asked Thanatos, who encountered all mortals eventually, but only at their ending. "Why not bestow your wisdom more broadly?" "Because wisdom cannot be bestowed," NYX explained to God. "It can only be awakened, and only those who have prepared themselves, who have embraced uncertainty, who have made peace with paradox, who have cultivated receptivity to mystery, are ready for the particular truths I offer." Yet even as Athens reached its cultural zenith, NYX foresaw its inevitable decline. This was the nature of mortal civilization: to rise, to flourish, to decay. The pattern repeated across continents and centuries, a cycle as predictable as her own alternation with Hemera. "Do not mourn what has not yet fallen," advised Hypnos, seeing his mother's melancholy as she gazed upon the Parthenon gleaming under moonlight. "Enjoy the beauty of this moment, this culmination of human potential." "I do not mourn, my son," NYX corrected. "I appreciate." In the brevity of mortal achievement lies its poignancy, its precious nature. What exists forever cannot be lost, but neither can it be so deeply cherished. As predicted, Athens eventually lost its prominence. Rome rose to dominance. With this transition came changes in how mortals perceived and categorized divine forces. Nyx became Nox in Latin nomenclature, her children assigned Roman names and sometimes altered attributes. The stories shifted, the relationships reconfigured, the cosmic hierarchy reimagined to suit new cultural perspectives. Yet beneath these superficial changes, the essential truths remained. Darkness still balanced light, sleep still renewed consciousness, dreams still conveyed messages beyond rational understanding. Death still marked the necessary transition from one state of being to another. The fates still wove and measured and cut the threads of mortal lives. In her palace at the edge of chaos, Nyx welcomed a visitor, a newcomer to the divine hierarchy, though one whose essence resonated with her own. Mithras, god of cosmic mysteries, born of Persian tradition but embraced by Romans, particularly soldiers who sought initiation into deeper understanding. Ancient Mother, he greeted her with respect, though his form was youthful, vital. "I come seeking wisdom from one who has witnessed the turning of ages." Nyx studied this young old god, this deity both foreign and familiar. "You stand at the threshold between traditions," she observed, "neither fully Eastern nor Western, neither fully old nor new. This liminal position gives you unique perspective." "As does yours," Mithras replied. "You who were before categories existed, before boundaries were drawn between pantheons and powers. They spoke through the night of cosmic mysteries, of the dance between light and darkness, of the symbolic death that precedes spiritual rebirth." Mithras shared insights from his Mithraic mysteries, the initiation rites conducted in underground temples where torchlight created dialogue between illumination and shadow. "Your followers understand the sacred nature of darkness," Nyx acknowledged. In their cave-like sanctuaries, they recognize that revelation requires the contrast of concealment. "They seek the light born from darkness," Mithras affirmed, "the order emerging from chaos, the clarity that follows confusion. These are universal truths transcending culture and era." As they concluded their exchange, Nyx offered her counterpart a gift, a fragment of primordial darkness encapsulated in a small obsidian sphere. "For your temples," she explained. "Place it at the threshold. Let initiates touch it before entering, to remind them that all wisdom begins with the acknowledgement of mystery." Mithras accepted the gift with reverence. "The darkness that nurtures rather than negates, this understanding will deepen our practices." This exchange symbolized a larger pattern developing across the mortal world. As cultures encountered one another through trade, conquest, and migration, their divine narratives began to intermingle. Gods were recognized across linguistic boundaries, their names different but their essences aligned. Deeper spiritual currents were acknowledged beneath surface differences in ritual and mythology. Nyx, who predated all human attempts to categorize divine reality, understood this process as natural evolution. The stories might change, the names might shift, but the fundamental relationship between mortals and the cosmic forces that shaped their existence remained essentially consistent. "They are learning," she told her court of shadows, "that divinity transcends their boundaries. They begin to recognize patterns, correspondences, underlying unities. This is progress toward truth." Yet even as spiritual understanding deepened in some quarters, simplification occurred in others. The complex interplay of divine forces that had been acknowledged in earlier ages was increasingly reduced to stark dualism. Light versus darkness, good versus evil, order versus chaos. This troubled Nyx, not from ego but from concern for cosmic balance. "They forget that darkness nurtures as well as conceals," she observed as she watched priests of a new religion demonize all that was associated with night. "They forget that light can blind as well as reveal." "Perhaps this is a necessary phase in their understanding," suggested Hecate, who had herself been reduced from complex goddess of thresholds to fearsome witch in popular imagination. Perhaps they must separate polarities completely before they can comprehend their interdependence. Perhaps, NYX conceded. But in the meantime, much wisdom is lost. Much unnecessary suffering created through misunderstanding. And indeed, as monotheistic religions gained prominence across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East, many ancient deities were either absorbed into the new framework as angels or saints, rejected as demons or false gods, or relegated to folk belief and superstition. NYX, being more concept than personality in human understanding, experienced this transition differently than the more anthropomorphic deities. Night itself could not be denied or demonized completely. It remained an inescapable aspect of human experience, a necessary complement today. But its sacred associations, its generative and nurturing aspects were increasingly overlooked in dominant religious paradigms. Yet in the shadows, in the margins, in the spaces between official doctrine and lived experience, night maintained its mystery and power. Folk traditions preserved ancient wisdom under new guises. Mystical branches of major religions recognized the necessary interplay of revelation and concealment. Poets and artists continued to find in darkness a source of inspiration and truth. And in dreams, in that realm where NYX's influence remained unchallenged, mortals still encountered insights beyond logical categorization, still received guidance that transcended cultural constraints, still experienced the generative power of creative darkness. They have not forgotten us, NYX assured her children as they gathered in her palace. They have simply given us new names, new contexts, new symbolic expressions. The essential relationship remains. As millennia passed, the world of mortals changed. Old gods were forgotten as new faiths arose. Temples crumbled, oracles fell silent, and the divine retreated further from human affairs. Yet NYX remained constant. Unlike her Olympian successors, her power never depended on mortal worship. Night continued its cosmic dance with day, regardless of human belief or disbelief. In her ageless wisdom, NYX understood something the younger gods did not. Divinity was not diminished by changing mortal perspective, merely transformed. The essence remained, even as names and stories evolved. Humans might no longer recognize her as a goddess with form and consciousness, but they still felt her presence in the velvet darkness between sunset and dawn. Astronomers charting celestial movements, lovers meeting under starlight, philosophers contemplating infinity, all communed with NYX without naming her. And sometimes, in the deepest hours when even insomniacs briefly surrender to sleep, NYX would send her gentlest dreams to touch mortal minds. Not to demand worship or recognition, but to remind humanity that darkness is not to be feared. It is the necessary counterpart to light, the womb from which renewal emerges. During the medieval period, when darkness was often associated with evil in religious iconography, NYX observed the disconnection with sadness, but without anger. They have forgotten half of cosmic truth, she remarked to Erebus, as they watched a priest warn his congregation about the perils of night. They have made enemy of alley, threat of sanctuary. Yet not all have forgotten, Erebus noted, directing her attention to a monastery where monks rose at midnight for the divine office of matins. These understand that darkness offers sacred space for contemplation, that night provides necessary pause between days of activity. Indeed, across traditions and cultures, night maintained its spiritual significance despite shifting theological frameworks. In Christian monasticism, the night offices held special importance, times when the distractions of day were absent, when the soul could more easily focus on divine presence. In Sufism, the nighttime was celebrated for similar reasons, offering proximity to Allah when worldly concerns were suspended. In Taoism, darkness was honored as yin, the receptive, nurturing counterpart to active yang, both necessary for balance and harmony. As the Renaissance dawned in Europe, bringing renewed interest in classical learning, the old stories of gods and goddesses were revisited, not as religious truth, but as cultural heritage, as symbolic language, as artistic inspiration. NYX appeared in paintings and poetry, in operas and sculptures, her image reinterpreted through humanist perspective. "They remember me now as metaphor," she observed to her daughter Hemera as they passed each other at twilight. "No longer deity, but symbol." "Is this loss or gain?" asked Hemera, her form radiant with approaching day. "Neither," NYX replied after thoughtful pause. "It is transformation. In losing specific form, I gain universal application. In becoming symbol rather than personality, I speak to deeper levels of consciousness." This philosophical acceptance characterized NYX's relationship with changing human understanding. Unlike younger deities who might cling to outdated forms of worship or demand recognition on their own terms, Night understood that adaptation was necessary for relevance, that evolution was the only constant in cosmic experience. As the Enlightenment spread across Europe, bringing with it scientific revolution and rationalist philosophy, NYX observed with interest rather than opposition. When astronomers peered into the night sky with increasingly powerful telescopes, discovering planets and moons and distant galaxies, she felt no threat to her domain, only appreciation for this new form of communion with cosmic darkness. "They seek me now through observation rather than invocation," she noted. "They court me with calculations rather than prayers, yet the essential relationship remains, the mortal mind reaching toward cosmic mystery, trying to comprehend what exists beyond immediate perception." Indeed, as science advanced, the mysteries of night only deepened. The discovery that darkness was not merely absence of light, but the natural state of most of the universe. That what humans called outer space was primarily vast darkness in which stars were scattered exceptions, resonated with NYX's primordial nature. "They begin to understand," she told the assembled court of shadows, "that darkness is not secondary to light, but primary. That what they call space is in fact my body, my substance, my being." Their telescopes reveal not emptiness, but fullness beyond comprehension. Yet even as astronomical understanding expanded, bringing with it recognition of humanity's small place in an immense cosmos, cultural attitudes toward night on Earth often remained ambivalent or negative. The spread of artificial lighting, first gas lamps, then electric bulbs, pushed back the domain of darkness in cities and towns, creating islands of perpetual illumination. "They fear what they cannot control," observed Thanatos as he and his mother watched a city transition from natural cycles to artificial constancy. "They believe that banishing darkness brings security, yet in doing so they lose connection with cosmic rhythm," NYX replied. "They forget that darkness is necessary for renewal, for dreaming, for the deepest forms of creativity. Their artificial days create artificial consciousness, always active, never receptive, always revealing, never concealing, always output, never input." Despite this trend, NYX recognized that complete separation from darkness was impossible for embodied beings. Humans still slept, still dreamed, still required periods of rest and recovery. And in their art, their music, their literature, they still acknowledged the generative power of shadow, the necessity of contrast, the beauty of mystery. Poets like Novalis wrote hymns to night, celebrating darkness as the realm of true spiritual insight. Composers like Chopin created nocturnes that captured in sound the contemplative intimacy of darkness. Painters like Rembrandt and later Turner used shadows not as absence, but as presence, creating depth and meaning through the interplay of light and dark. They express through art what their rational minds have forgotten, NYX noted with approval. The creative spirit remembers what the calculating intellect denies, that darkness is not deficiency, but difference, not lack, but alternative presence. As the industrial age gave way to the information age, NYX observed new forms of relationship between humanity and night. The development of astrophysics, quantum mechanics, and cosmology brought scientific confirmation of what she had always embodied: that darkness contained energy, that emptiness was filled with potential, that the void was not vacant but pregnant with possibility. "They discover dark matter and dark energy," she told Erebus, with something like amusement. "They calculate that what they cannot see constitutes most of what exists. They develop mathematics to describe what eludes direct observation. They approach cosmic truth through measurement and model." "Does this scientific approach please you?" Erebus asked, his voice the whisper of interstellar vacuum. "It pleases me that they seek understanding through multiple paths," NYX replied. "That they recognize science and art as complementary rather than contradictory approaches to mystery. The astronomer who calculates the movement of galaxies and the poet who writes of starlight on water are engaged in the same essential activity, translating cosmic experience into human meaning. Yet even as theoretical understanding of cosmic darkness expanded, practical relationship with night on Earth became increasingly problematic. Light pollution from cities made stars invisible to most humans. Shift work and digital screens disrupted natural circadian rhythms. The boundary between day and night, once absolute, became permeable, negotiable, sometimes irrelevant to daily life. They have forgotten how to be in darkness, NYX observed with concern, forgotten how to welcome shadow, how to navigate by starlight, how to find comfort in the absence of constant stimulation. Perhaps this too is a necessary phase in their evolution, suggested Hypnos. Perhaps they must lose connection completely before they can recognize its value and consciously reclaim it. There were signs that such reclamation was beginning. Dark sky preserves were established to protect natural night from light pollution. Sleep science revealed the crucial importance of darkness for physical and mental health. Meditation and contemplative practices gained popularity, offering experiences of inner darkness as sanctuary from constant external input. They begin to remember, NYX acknowledged with cautious optimism, not through mythology, but through lived experience, through bodily wisdom, through recognition of cosmic pattern. And indeed, as the 21st century progressed, many humans developed renewed appreciation for darkness, not as fearsome absence, but as necessary counterpoint to technological illumination. They sought experiences of natural night through camping and stargazing. They created art that explored shadow as subject rather than background. They studied the harmful effects of constant light and began to implement more balanced approaches to urban design and personal technology use. They rediscover me not as goddess, but as necessity, NYX observed, not as personality, but as principle. This is fitting for the current age, recognition of pattern rather than personification of power. Throughout these cultural shifts and transformations, NYX maintained her essential nature, the darkness that balances light, the mystery that contextualizes knowledge, the void that nurtures creation. Her relationship with humanity evolved, her symbolic expressions transformed, but her cosmic function remained constant across millennia. There comes a time in the life of every immortal when they must face a fundamental choice: to cling to what was or to embrace what is becoming. For many of the Olympians, this choice proved difficult. They retreated to mythic realms, becoming memories, stories, archetypal energies rather than conscious beings. But NYX, who predated them all, who had witnessed countless pantheons rise and fall, chose a different path. She who had been there before the beginning would remain until after the end. As human civilization advanced, developing technologies that illuminated the night with artificial suns, some feared that night herself was retreating, diminished by human ingenuity. But NYX merely smiled at such notions, for what these mortals did not understand was that her essence existed not merely in the absence of light, but in the fundamental concept of transition, the sacred space between one state and another. Their electric lights might push back the visible darkness, but they could never eliminate the night within the human soul, the necessary periods of rest and dreaming, the internal shadows that give depth to consciousness. And as their telescopes pierced deeper into the cosmos, revealing that what they had once called heavens was in fact a vast ocean of darkness in which light was the exception rather than the rule, NYX found herself not diminished but expanded in human understanding. They see me more clearly now than they ever did with temples and sacrifices, she confided to Hecate during one of their eternal conversations. They understand that darkness is not emptiness but fullness beyond comprehension. Yet even as mortals began to comprehend the immensity of cosmic night, they still failed to grasp its consciousness, its awareness, its love. They measured and mapped and theorized about dark matter and dark energy, coming ever closer to scientific understanding while remaining blind to the profound truth that night was not merely a condition, but a presence, watching, nurturing, embracing all creation in her boundless self. As the 21st century progressed, humanity faced unprecedented challenges: climate change, mass extinction, social upheaval, technological transformation. In this time of radical uncertainty, many found themselves drawn to night not as escape but as teacher, as the realm where fixed categories dissolve and new possibilities emerge. They come to me now as students rather than supplicants, NYX observed with approval. They seek not favors but perspective, not intervention but insight. And indeed, across disciplines and cultures, darkness was being re-evaluated, reclaimed, recognized anew as necessary counterpart to perpetual illumination. Architects designed buildings that honored shadow as well as light. Environmental scientists advocated for protection of natural darkness as ecological necessity. Psychologists explored the value of symbolic descent into personal shadow for psychological integration and healing. Even in digital realms, where light had seemed the only possible medium, darkness gained new relevance. Dark mode interfaces reduced eye strain and conserved energy. Immersive technologies created experiences of controlled darkness for therapeutic and creative purposes. Virtual reality enabled exploration of cosmic darkness through simulated space travel and astronomical visualization. They extend their relationship with me into new domains, NYX noted with interest. They recognize that even in spaces of their own creation, balance between revelation and concealment remains necessary. As the millennium progressed, humanity's relationship with night continued to evolve in response to changing conditions. Climate change altered seasonal patterns of light and dark. Space exploration brought humans into more direct contact with cosmic darkness. The development of artificial intelligence raised questions about consciousness beyond biological parameters, questions that resonated with NYX's own non-human awareness. Through all these transformations, NYX maintained her role as witness and participant, observer and catalyst. Her essence, the sacred darkness that balances light, the mystery that contextualizes knowledge, the void that nurtures potential, remained relevant across changing scenarios, adaptable to new forms of relationship with evolving humanity. "We who were first will also be last," she told her assembled children as they gathered in her palace at the edge of chaos. "We who embodied cosmic principles rather than specific cultural values transcend the rise and fall of particular beliefs. Our truth is not historical but eternal, not local but universal." And so NYX continued her cosmic dance with Hemera, her eternal dialogue with light, her ongoing relationship with all conscious beings. Through dreams and darkness, through shadow and sleep, through the necessary spaces between definition, she maintained her essential connection with creation. Not diminished, but transformed, not forgotten but reinterpreted, not rejected but reclaimed. Night moved through cosmic history as she had since the beginning, patient, present, pregnant with possibility. There is a prophecy, as old as time itself, spoken by NYX to her firstborn children. It tells of a distant future, when the stars will go out one by one, when entropy claims the last structured systems, when even the concept of cosmos versus chaos blurs beyond recognition. In this twilight of existence, when the youngest gods have faded to memory and memory itself has become suspect, NYX will gather the remaining threads of consciousness from across all that was. She will weave them together with strands of her own being, creating a new potential, a new pregnancy of possibility. And into this cosmic egg of pre-creation, she will pour all the wisdom gained through countless cycles of existence. Then, like a mother who must step away so her child can find its own path, she will allow herself to dissolve into the egg of new creation. Her final act will be her greatest gift, becoming the sacred darkness from which the next reality will emerge. This is not an ending, the prophecy insists, but the ultimate transition. Night herself becoming the womb for a new dawn that none can foresee. When NYX first shared this prophecy with her children, they received it with varying responses. Thanatos, already accustomed to transitions, understood immediately. The fates nodded in solemn acknowledgement, recognizing cosmic pattern beyond individual destiny. But others were troubled, fearful, resistant to the concept of such fundamental change. "Mother," protested Eris, her form shimmering with conflicting energies, "how can you speak of your own dissolution? You who were first, you who have endured when younger gods faded. How could existence continue without you?" NYX's smile contained galaxies. "Dear daughter, you mistake continuity for stasis. I have never been fixed, never static, never unchanging. From the beginning, my nature has been transformation, the darkness that enables new creation. This final metamorphosis will not be departure, but fulfillment. But who will maintain the balance? Asked Nemesis, whose own function depended on cosmic equilibrium. Who will ensure that light does not dominate unchecked, that revelation is tempered with necessary concealment? Balance is not imposed, but inherent, NYX explained. The next creation will discover its own forms of harmony, its own expressions of cosmic law. Our specific roles may not continue, but the principles we embody will find new manifestation. This prophecy remained private knowledge among NYX's court of shadows for eons. It was not shared with Olympians or other younger deities, not recorded in mortal mythologies or sacred texts. It was cosmic truth beyond current comprehension, relevant only in the most distant future. Yet as that future gradually approached, as stars began to burn out faster than new ones formed, as galaxies moved steadily apart, as the expansion of the universe continued its inexorable course, NYX began preparations for her final role. She gathered experiences from across cosmic history. The first stirrings of consciousness in primordial waters, the emergence of complex life forms across countless worlds, the development of art, language, music, mathematics, the pattern of civilizations rising and falling like waves on temporal shores, the hard-won wisdom of beings who had transcended their own limitations to glimpse universal truth. All these she collected not as separate memories, but as integrated understanding, as distilled meaning, as essence rather than incident. This would be her contribution to the next creation, not specific content, but cosmic context, not particular knowledge, but pattern recognition, not answers, but properly formulated questions. You prepare as if for imminent transformation, observed Erebus as they moved together through increasingly empty space. Yet by all calculations, final entropy lies billions of years ahead. For beings who measure existence in eons, even billions of years constitute imminent, NYX replied. And proper preparation requires perspective that only time provides. Each experience now must be evaluated not merely for its immediate significance, but for its potential contribution to what comes after. This dual awareness, fully present in current reality while simultaneously preparing for ultimate transition, characterized NYX's consciousness during these latter cosmic days. She continued her eternal dance with Hemera, continued her guidance of dreams and fate, continued her embrace of all that exists. But within these ongoing activities, she maintained awareness of their place in the larger pattern, their contribution to the wisdom that would seed the next creation. As cosmic history progressed toward its distant conclusion, NYX found herself in increasing dialogue with other primordial entities, those whose existence, like hers, transcended particular pantheons or belief systems. Kronos, personification of time; Ananke, embodiment of necessity; Phanes, the revealed light. These ancient ones, who had witnessed the full sweep of existence from its earliest stirrings, shared perspective that younger deities could not comprehend. We speak now of matters beyond conceptualization, NYX acknowledged as they gathered in the space between dying galaxies. Of transformation so fundamental that no existing language can capture it, no current consciousness can fully imagine it. Yet we must prepare, insisted Ananke, her form both perfectly defined and constantly shifting. We who were first bear responsibility for what comes last, and, through that, what comes after. Not control, clarified Phanes, his light now gentle where once it had been blinding. Not prescription or determination, but contribution, offering, gift. Precisely, agreed NYX. We cannot and should not determine the exact nature of the next creation, but we can ensure that the wisdom gained through this cosmic cycle is not lost but transmitted, not ended but transformed. This, then, became the focus of their final collaboration. Not preservation of existing forms, but distillation of essential principles. Not continuation of specific entities, but transmission of fundamental patterns. They worked not with desperate urgency, but with measured purpose. Not with fear of ending, but with appreciation for process. And as they worked, cosmic history continued its slow progression toward conclusion. Star by star, galaxy by galaxy, the universe grew darker, colder, more dispersed. Yet in this increasing emptiness, NYX found not desolation, but familiar welcome, return to the primordial state from which all had emerged, the sacred void pregnant with unrealized potential. It becomes again as it was in the beginning, she observed to her children, gathered for one of their increasingly rare assemblies. The wheel turns full circle. But is it truly circle? Questioned Hypnos, or spiral? Does the ending truly mirror the beginning, or does it incorporate all that has occurred between? Spiral, confirmed NYX, always spiral. The apparent return contains within it all journeying that preceded. The final darkness is not identical to the first. It is darkness that has experienced light, emptiness that has known fullness, potential that has witnessed actualization. As the final stars burn toward extinction and the last organized systems approach dissolution, NYX began the culmination of her cosmic role. From the scattered remains of consciousness across the universe, from beings organic and synthetic, individual and collective, embodied and energy-based, she gathered fragments of awareness, shards of experience, echoes of insight. These she wove together, not into tapestry, but into seed, not into memorial, but into potential. The cosmic egg began to take form, not physical in any recognizable sense, but a concentrated essence of all that had been, transformed into possibility for all that might become. Mother, said Thanatos, watching this process with solemn attention, when you complete this working, when you dissolve yourself into the new potential, what happens to us, your children, your aspects, your emanations? NYX paused in her weaving to embrace her eldest son. You will find your own paths, she told him gently. Some may choose to dissolve with me, contributing your specific wisdom to the new creation. Others may choose to remain as witnesses, as bridges between what was and what will be. Still others may transform into forms appropriate to the emerging reality. And will we remember? Asked Hypnos, joining his twin. In whatever form we take, will we retain knowledge of what has been, of you, of ourselves, of this existence? Not as specific memory, NYX explained, but as deep pattern, as intuitive recognition. The details of narrative may fade, but the essence of understanding remains. You will know without knowing how you know. One by one, her children came to her as she continued her cosmic work. The fates laying down their implements as the last life threads reached conclusion. The dreams offering the final visions of the last dreaming minds. Nemesis, whose role of cosmic balance would transform in a reality beyond duality. Each received guidance, blessing, freedom to determine their own culmination. Hecate, not daughter but devoted student, was among the last to approach. Her triple form had simplified over eons to single essence. Her crossroads transformed from physical to conceptual as space itself thinned toward non-existence. Teacher, she addressed NYX, you have prepared me for countless transitions, guided me through innumerable thresholds, but this final crossing, how do I navigate what has no precedent, no pattern, no prior example? NYX smiled, and in her smile was the wisdom of all existence. As you have always done, dear one, with courage, with openness, with trust in the underlying integrity of cosmic process. The scale may be ultimate, but the principle remains the same, surrender to transformation without losing essential self. And will you truly be gone? Hecate asked, her voice uncharacteristically vulnerable. You who have been constant since before beginning? Not gone, NYX corrected, transformed beyond current recognition. I will not exist as the being you have known, but what is essential in me will continue, not as entity but as principle, not as form but as function. As the cosmic egg neared completion, as the last fragments of consciousness were gathered and integrated, as entropy approached its theoretical maximum, NYX called together all who remained for a final communion. Her court of shadows expanded now to include representatives from across cosmic history, primordials and titans, Olympians and minor deities, beings from beyond Earth whose names had no translation in human language, consciousnesses that had evolved beyond individual identity into collective awareness. We stand at the threshold of ultimate transition, she addressed them, her voice both softer and more powerful than ever before. Not ending, but transformation, not cessation, but renewal. What comes after cannot be seen from where we stand, cannot be described in concepts derived from current existence. But this uncertainty is not to be feared, it is to be embraced as the final and greatest expression of cosmic potential. The darkness into which we journey is not absence, but fullness beyond comprehension. Not void, but pure possibility. And in this darkness, as has been true since the beginning, lies the seed of all creation. One by one, those gathered made their choices. Some chose dissolution, merging their essence with the cosmic egg. Others chose witness status, determining to observe whatever transition might emerge. Still others chose forms of suspended animation, neither participating directly nor completely removing themselves from potential future involvement. When all others had made their decisions, when the cosmic egg contained all gathered wisdom of existence, when the universe had expanded to near emptiness and the last organized energy approached dissipation, NYX prepared for her final transformation. She did not announce this moment with fanfare or ceremony. There was no countdown, no dramatic declaration, no elaborate ritual. Instead, with the same quiet dignity that had characterized her entire existence, she simply released her hold on individual identity and allowed herself to merge with her final creation, becoming at once everything and nothing, both source and substance, both creator and creation. In that moment of ultimate surrender, something shifted in the fabric of reality itself. The cosmic egg, now complete, began its own process, not growth as understood in physical terms, but a form of inward intensification, a concentration of potential that transcended existing categories of description, for an interval that might have been instant or eternity. Time itself having become suspect in this final phase, nothing discernible occurred. The witnesses waited in what might be called patience if patience had meaning beyond sequential experience. The suspended remained in their self-determined limbo. The merged existed in state beyond individual awareness. Then, from the heart of the cosmic egg, from the deepest center of concentrated potential, came something that was neither sound nor light nor energy as previously understood, but a fundamentally new expression of existence itself. The mathematicians among the witnesses might have called it an emergent property. The mystics might have named it cosmic rebirth. The scientists might have termed it spontaneous phase transition, but all such descriptions would be approximation, translation of the untranslatable into concepts derived from the very reality that was being transcended. What is certain is that from NYX's final gift, her complete surrender into the seed of new creation, emerged the possibility of continuation beyond ending, of renewal beyond exhaustion, of meaning beyond entropy, not repetition of what had been, but entirely new expression drawn from distilled essence of all previous existence. The specifics of this new creation remain, by definition, beyond description in terms comprehensible to current consciousness. To attempt such description would be like explaining symphony to single-celled organism, like conveying calculus through finger painting, like translating quantum entanglement into nursery rhyme. What can be said is that NYX's prophecy fulfilled itself not as endpoint, but as transition, not as termination, but as transformation. Her final act became her greatest creation, the sacred darkness from which new light emerged, the cosmic womb birthing reality beyond current imagination. And so the circle that is spiral completed one turn and began another. Not identical repetition, but evolutionary progression, not exact duplication, but thematic continuation. The cosmic story neither ended nor simply repeated, but transformed into its next expression, carrying within it the distilled wisdom of all that had been. Until that distant eventuality, NYX continues her eternal work. Each sunset is her breath drawing across the world. Each dawn is her graceful withdrawal. The rhythm of her presence and absence creates the heartbeat of existence itself. She who was first still watches over all, her star-flecked consciousness embracing galaxies, her love extending to all beings whether they know her name or not. For she is NYX, the ancient night, mother of mysteries, guardian of dreams, the sacred darkness that nurtures all potential. And her story, like her essence, has no true ending. Long after the final notes of our tale have faded, after the last star has dimmed in the cosmic expanse, NYX's essence persists in the silent places between what was and what will be. Though her form may change across time and understanding, her nature, the creative darkness, the nurturing void, the generative mystery remains eternal. For those with ears to hear, she still speaks through the language of dreams and intuition. For those with eyes to see, she still reveals herself in the spaces between stars, in the depths of oceans, in the quiet center of contemplative mind. Her message transcends specific theology or cosmology. beyond any single cultural interpretation of divinity. It is the universal truth that has whispered through all genuine mystical traditions, all authentic spiritual insights, all deep scientific revelations. That darkness is not enemy to light, but its necessary partner. That emptiness is not absence, but potential. That endings contain within them the seeds of new beginning. In practical terms, what wisdom does NYX offer to those who would listen? What guidance does night provide to beings cycling through their own smaller patterns of light and dark, activity and rest, revelation and concealment? First, she teaches the sacred value of periodicity, the necessary rhythm of alternation rather than constant state. Just as cosmic night follows cosmic day in eternal cycle, so too should individual life honor the alternation of doing and being, expressing and receiving, manifesting and contemplating. Constant light blinds, NYX whispers, to those who would eliminate all darkness from their experience. Constant activity depletes. Constant exposure withers. Learn the wisdom of withdrawal, of concealment, of sacred pause between expressions. Second, she demonstrates the creative potential of apparent emptiness. The void is not vacant, but pregnant with possibility. The blank page is not absence, but invitation to word. The fallow field is not barren, but gathering nutrients for future harvest. Do not fear the empty spaces. She counsels those who rush to fill every silence with sound, every moment with activity, every uncertainty with premature conclusion. In apparent emptiness lies the womb of creation. In darkness, seeds germinate. In silence, deepest wisdom speaks. Third, she illustrates the necessity of mystery for meaningful existence. Complete revelation eliminates discovery. Absolute certainty precludes growth. Total illumination casts no shadows to provide depth and dimension. Embrace the unknown, not as threat, but as gift. She encourages those who seek security in complete comprehension. Mystery is not problem to solve, but reality to engage. Questions often serve better than answers, for they keep consciousness flexible, perception fresh, understanding evolving. Fourth, she embodies the power of receptivity as equal counterpart to expression. The night sky receives light from innumerable sources, creating context that gives each star meaning within larger pattern. The dark pupil of the eye receives light that makes vision possible. The fertile soil receives seed that enables growth. Receiving is not passive, but actively creative. She reminds those who value only visible production, measurable output, tangible creation. The art of graceful reception, of influence, of insight, of energy, is as crucial to cosmic order as the art of generation. Fifth, she exemplifies the courage of self-transformation as cosmic principle. From her primordial emergence to her prophesied dissolution into new creation, NYX demonstrates that identity is not fixed state to preserve, but dynamic process to engage, not fortress to defend, but river to navigate. You are not thing but process, she whispers to those who cling to outdated self-definitions, who resist necessary evolution, who fear the death of who they have been. True continuity lies not in unchanged form, but in integrity of transformation. What is most essential in you is precisely what can survive radical change. These teachings, the wisdom of periodicity, the creativity of emptiness, the necessity of mystery, the power of receptivity, the courage of transformation, constitute NYX's ongoing gift to consciousness in all its expressions. Not doctrine to memorize, but perspective to embody. Not belief to profess, but reality to experience. And for those who align themselves with her nature, who honor darkness as well as light in cosmic pattern, who recognize void as creative principle rather than fearsome absence, who embrace mystery as necessary context for revelation, NYX offers particular blessing. To poets who court her mysteries through language, she grants images that emerge from depths beyond conscious invention. To scientists who respect the vast unknown surrounding islands of knowledge, she provides intuitive leaps that bridge seemingly unrelated observations. To mystics who embrace darkness as divine attribute rather than mere absence of divinity, she reveals aspects of cosmic order invisible to more dualistic perception. For NYX plays favorites not by arbitrary preference but by natural resonance. Those who align themselves with her nature naturally receive her gifts, just as plants that open at night naturally receive the pollination of nocturnal insects, just as creatures with night-adapted vision naturally perceive what day-limited perception cannot detect. This is not reward or punishment, but simple cosmic ecology. Each aspect of existence nurturing what aligns with its nature, each principle supporting its own expressions across varied forms and scales. So it has been since the beginning. So it continues through all transformations of cosmic order. So it will remain until the final transition, when NYX, true to her primordial nature, will once again become the sacred darkness from which new light emerges. This is her promise, her prophecy, her cosmic function, to be not merely counterpart to light, but its source and destination, not merely interval between manifestations, but the generative void from which all manifestation emerges and to which all eventually returns for renewal. In the meantime, in this middle space of current existence, this interim between primordial beginning and ultimate transformation, she continues her eternal dance with light, her ongoing dialogue with form, her necessary relationship with all conscious entities. Through darkness and dreams, through shadow and sleep, through mystery and potential, she embraces all creation in her star-flecked consciousness, her boundless awareness, her cosmic love. For she is NYX, the ancient night, mother of mysteries, guardian of dreams, the sacred darkness that nurtures all potential. And her story, like her essence, has no true ending.